Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to lesson 15.2, page 680 in our big ideas, where we're continuing with volume and similar solids. We're going to use our formulas today to find the volume of a cone. So our shape for today's lesson happens to be a cone. And we want to know our essential question, well, how do you find the volume of that cone? Well, of course, you were asked to take some notes from the top of page 680, the key idea on volume of a cone. You looked at something similar to this, and hopefully in your notes, you did copy a picture of a cone. You took this down and labeled as area of the base. Remember, capital B is the area of the base. And then the height being the perpendicular distance between the vertex and straight down to the base. Most of the time it will be in the center. It all depends on how that cone is situated. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, you read that 1/3 of the base and the height will give you the volume of a cone. That is because the relationship between a cone and a cylinder with congruent bases and the same height is the same exact relationship that we had back in our previous unit between the prism and a pyramid when we had congruent bases and equal heights, that it's 1/3. And of course, you will see I like to use this formula. Volume is area of the base times the height. And I'm just going to divide by 3 because multiplying by 1/3 ends up being dividing by 3 anyway. So I don't like doing with fractions. Let's just do it that way. Let's get right busy on our first example of the day. So finding the volume of the cone, we're going to round our answers to the nearest tenth when we can. And you know me, first of all, I always highlight my base. Okay, I can see that my base is a circle. And then I recognize my height. I label it. And then I come in here, I want to find the volume of a cone, and I just learned that it's area of the base times the height divided by 3. I know that my base is a circle, and that we need to use pi times the radius squared to find the area of the base, multiplying by the height and dividing by 3. Let's put in the key essential numbers. We're not going to write pi out right now. We're just going to leave it as the pi symbol because we know we want to have our answers in terms of pi, and then we'll continue from there. The radius of our base, since I highlight it and it is a circle, we find that the radius, because that's what we need, is 8. They were nice enough to give it to us. The height of our cone is 10, and we're dividing by 3. So now we're going to do our math. We're going to come up here. We're going to start simplifying. We're going to leave that pi symbol. We got 8 squared. That's 64. I can't simplify here anywhere with the 3 and the 10, so I'm going to still multiply that by 10 and divide by 3. Continuing to simplify, pi times 640 divided by 3. And when you take 640 and divide by 3, you get 213.3 repeating times pi. And then, of course, if we leave this answer in terms of pi, we have millimeters cubed. Remember, cubed is always our volume. So that's writing the answer in terms of pi. And then when we multiply that by 3.14, of course, we get the final answer. We get 669.86 repeating. It does say round to the nearest tenth, so my final answer is 669.9 millimeters cubed when I take it all the way out. Very good. Remember, pause if you need to copy all of this down. So important to have all the steps copied down so that you can use that as a reference when you are practicing. Alrighty, example number 2. Again, volume of the cone, rounding to the nearest tenth. You know me. First thing I always do on everything is I highlight my base. I recognize my base as a circle. The height of my cone for my shape is 9. And of course, volume is equal to area of the base times the height divided by 3. My base is a circle. Pi r squared times the height divided by 3. Putting in our numbers, we have our pi, we have our radius. Once again, they were nice enough to give it to us, 4.5 squared. The height of our cone is 9, and we're dividing by 3. And then, of course, we're going to continue on by simplifying. I have pi, 4.5 squared happens to be 20.25. And then, of course, I can see this. I can come over here and I can simplify my 3 and the 9 and make 3. So I'm just going to multiply that by 3. And voila, there we go. And then when I multiply 20.25 times 3, I get pi. I'm going to write that in a different order. I get 60.75 pi. And then, of course, I can add my units, inches cubed. And there's my answer in terms of pi. And then when I multiply that by 3.14, I get 190.755. Rounding that to the nearest tenth for our final answer would be 190.8 inches cubed. Of course, if you left your answer in terms of pi rounded to the nearest tenth, you would have said 60.8. But I'm not going to round it until I get to my final answer. Very good. Well, we're going to continue on. Oops, I went too far there. Example 3, finding the volume of the cone, rounding to the nearest tenth. Of course, my base for a cone is a circle. We see that the height here is 5. We know that the volume is area of the base times the height divided by 3. We know that the base is a circle, pi times the radius squared times the height, all divided by 3. And then we say, let's put in our essential numbers. We have pi. Now, the radius, we don't have the radius. We look at this circle and they have the distance all the way across. That would be the diameter. So if I divide that diameter by 2, I get the radius is 5. So now I got to come down here. It's so important to remember we must have the radius and not the diameter. So we always have to look at our base closely. Our height is 5, and again we're dividing by 3. And of course I want to simplify out now. I have pi times 25 times 5 divided by 3. Still can't simplify that 3 out. So I have pi times 125 divided by 3, and 125 divided by 3 is 41.6 repeating. So I have 41.6 repeating, and that's pi, and that would be in centimeters cubed. That's our answer in terms of pi. But when I multiply that by 3.14 and continue out, I get 130.83 repeating. So my final answer, 130.8 centimeters cubed, rounded to the nearest tenth, and that is the volume of my cone. One more time, one last time. As you can see, our first 2 examples gave us a cone with a radius, and our last 2 examples, the one previous and this one, gives us a base with, again, a diameter. And so I'm going to recognize that right away, and I'm going to say my radius is 6. I've got the height of my cone right here, and that is 7. And again, we always do the same thing. Area of the base times the height divided by 3 for area of a cone. I know my base is a circle, pi r squared times the height, all divided by 3. You might think this is crazy writing this out every single time, but I'm telling you, if you write it out, always showing your work, 1, it's going to reinforce your memory for a really long time, and 2, you can find any mistake that we accidentally make. Putting in the essential numbers, pi times the radius squared, well, we figured out our radius was 6, and we have the height being 7, and we're dividing by 3, and we're going to simplify. So pi times 36 times 7, all divided by 3. Now notice, I had 6 squared and I had 3. Could I have simplified this 3 and that 6 before I squared? No, you're right. So that's why I did not do it there. That is not acceptable. But now after I've taken the square of 6 and gotten 36, I can simplify here and say that 3 goes into 36 12 times. And of course, 12 times 7, we all know that's a basic fact, 84 pi. And in terms of pi, this would be feet cubed for our answer. And if we take 84 and we multiply it by 3.14 to finish it off, we would have 263.76. So our final answer would be 263.8 feet cubed. Voila! Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking with me. Here is our first quick write of the night. Find the volume of the cone, rounding again to the nearest tenth. So in your quick write page, please draw your cone by making that circle, making that height, labeling everything correctly, putting in your height correctly, and labeling, they give us the, well, what dimension do they give us here? You label it, you know what it is. Ladies and gentlemen, when you're done, get a quick break, get a snack, refresh your brain, come back and see me in just a few minutes. See you in a minute.